us for dinner.
And we are live on the Flat Five podcast here with Brendan Williams, aka Chastity. My man, this is a very special episode. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
It's a blessing. It's a good February now. I'm very excited to chat with you and talk about you as an individual and as an artist. But to start things off, to get yourself familiarized with our audience, or rather to have our audience familiarize themselves with you, I'd like to ask you some random questions, some 10 questions that I was thinking of this morning that I think would be on the more interesting side. So the first thing that lies within my curiosity is if you own any pets.
Yep. Yeah, I've got 2 cats.
Very nice. What are the names?
Banksy and Cutie.
Very nice. Are you a cat first kind of guy?
Cat first, like over dogs or something? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Listen, I think cats are sort of like low ask, lower reward, and I think dogs are higher maintenance, higher reward, and I think cats fit well. I love our cats. They're sweethearts, but
yeah,
I think I've sometimes got like dog energy, and dog like dogs are like hyper and kind of trippy and crazy, but I like both. I think overall, yeah, I prefer cats. Like they just chill. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a dog guy myself. I've named my dog Miles after Miles Davis. And he's actually a bit more docile than most dogs. He's a Shih Tzu Poodle mix. And usually like one of the two are like really hyper, and my dog Miles like fits right in the middle, and he reads the room well. But it's funny because a lot of people like to say like, oh, the individual and their personality sort of matches their household pet and all that, right? But I mean, you're a performer, so of course you have those dog moments, right? Now, what is your favorite spread on a piece of bread?
I just had 2 pieces of toast this morning, and we're out of butter or something, and I put cream cheese on one, and I put peanut butter and raspberry jam on the other. So I think I think ultimately like peanut butter and jam is probably the ultimate one, but yeah, but cream cheese, for some reason on a bagel, doesn't cream cheese do better? But why doesn't it do well on toast?
Do the same on toast. That is, okay. That is a conundrum that I've been trying to figure out for time, because I am a peanut butter and jam guy myself. And I get the same thing every time I'm putting Philadelphia cream cheese on a piece of toast. It just doesn't hit the same as it does with a bagel. There's some sort of scientific mixture there that's not happening. Now, strawberry jam and peanut butter, or raspberry jam and peanut butter?
They're quite close, I'd say, but I think raspberry takes it for me, but they're so close.
They are. Have you ever tried honey and peanut butter?
Yes. Recently.
Oh, really?
Recently. Yeah, not until recently, and it's tight though.
It's so good. My dad put me on that Jesus when I was like a child, and I have that all the time. My mom is a big fan of making breads. Like she has like this big like red crock pot like ceramic thing. She cooks bread in it. The first thing I go for is like natural peanut butter and wild honey or wildflower honey, and Jesus, man, that's how you pack on the carbs, like no problem.
Yeah.
For sure, right? So you have your new album out, and I definitely want to take the time to chat about that. I mean, I'm sure on all the podcasts that you've been, there's always been the conversation with you and Dallas Green and all that. But I'd actually like to know, what sort of new music are you listening to? Are you exploring new music? Have there any new music in the sense of not released recently, but new to you that you've discovered?
Let me look and see on my shit. What have I been listening to? Good question.
I know that No Bro just released their EP today.
Oh shit! I'll check that out. Casey Musgraves. I'm seeing her tomorrow. I'm hyped for that. Have you heard Heavy Sweater? There's a band
I've heard of them, but I haven't listened to them.
They're a cool young band from Toronto, just like a cool emo band. I was listening to Lil Peep.
Nice.
Elliott Smith. That's not new, but
Elliott Smith is a fantastic artist. I'm a big fan of Elliott Smith.
Hell yeah. I'm just scrolling my stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There's a band called Summer Ring from Vancouver. I think they broke up, but I just discovered them. They're unreal. Yeah. Big Thief, I've got on here.
Have you listened to
that's my recent stuff. Pardon me?
Have you listened to Adrian Lenker?
Yeah, like from Big Thief or whatever.
Yeah, her solo stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, the most recent release songs is my introduction to her and the world of Big Thief, and that is a really flawless album. Like I'm a really big fan of her solo work.
Yeah, no, same. I've got a story about that. We played a festival in Amsterdam really early on in the project, I think in 2017, and Big Thief was headlining. Like it was like a venue festival, and we had asked the promoter. It was in Amsterdam, and Amsterdam's like, I think one of the most expensive places to sort of find a hotel in Europe. And we're kind of looking around like, where the hell are we going to stay tonight? And we asked the promoter, like, do you have any idea? Like, is there a cheap hotel or whatever? And he just so happened to have spare rooms in this like really expensive kind of boutique.
Right.
Yeah, fancy hotel. So we were pumped already. And we got there. By boutique, I mean, there must be 6 or 7 rooms in this whole hotel. Right. It's like small European, right downtown Amsterdam or whatever. And we got there, and as we were rounding the corner, Adrian Lenker was like sitting there cross-legged, playing guitar, like singing Neil Young.
Wow.
And we rounded the corner, and my girl was like almost starting to cry. Like, oh holy shit. It was like an insane moment. Like just being fans of her. We had watched her earlier in that day play in front of whatever, thousands of people, and just everyone in the audience just like awed by this. And then to go from that a few hours prior to that, just rounding this corner and there she is, we were like, what the fuck?
Did you get a chance to meet and chat with her?
Briefly, like so briefly. She like her bandmates were like playing pool as she, you know what I mean? And like drinking at a small bar. It was just like us and them and the bartender in this like small lobby in Amsterdam. It was like a pretty insane.
It's like a movie setting.
Moment, but she was like so sweet to us, and yeah, but we were just like fans.
I would be in awe, like, and they seem like very nice, genuine people. I mean, it also seems like it goes through the music as well, like their type of personality. Like, I mean, the first time I heard songs, her recent album, it feels like such a personal, body of work. Like you actually feel like you're listening to Adrian Lenker, like right there, singing the songs. And it feels really raw. Now you were in Amsterdam. What is like the favorite touring city within Europe, or your favorite city to have visit? Maybe not even necessarily the same night where you performed a gig, but what was your sort of favorite area to be, pre-COVID while you were on tour in Europe?
Yeah, we've been lucky to go over there. When I started the project, I was watching like Stone Roses interviews and like Oasis type of shit, and just dreaming of playing England.
Right.
And a goal of mine right away was like, I want to release one full length, and I want to just tour UK one time, get to go over there.
Yeah.
So I feel so lucky that we've been over there a few times now, and it like the UK for sure loves music. They've got like a pretty long history of music press and
Absolutely.
amazing music coming out of there. So England is great to play. Germany like seems to love like distortion, and you know what I mean, like
Yeah, of course.
um and so Germany was the last place in Europe we played before, like we were on the middle of a tour and we played Munich,
Right.
and on March 11th 2020, when shit was like going down, and
Yeah.
so we like bounced out of there.
Was that the
Drove.
tour? I think I'm not sure if I pronounced the band's name correctly, but was that the tour with Dive? DIIV?
Yeah, exactly. It's Dive. Yeah.
Dive.
So that was an insane tour and got cut short.
Okay.
But yeah, there's Europe is it's all yeah, it's so cool to play. And you know, did you grow up in Southern Ontario, like
Well,
in this area?
I grew up in the like Caledon area in the town of Bolton. I
Okay.
live up in Tottenham now, which is like I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it's like half hour south of Barrie or so.
Okay.
But I still do all of my music stuff and music business either from home or in Vaughan or downtown.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like Canada is quite wild to tour in, because obviously you're playing Saskatoon the other one night and then you're driving 8 hours to Calgary the next night. You know what I mean? So Europe is more like Southern Ontario. Like you can play Barrie and then you can play Toronto, and
Right.
it's not much of a drive typically.
There is a
So
lot of
it's
like metropolitan areas in between that are really close to each other. Like I see what you're
for
saying. Like,
sure.
go from one city to another, you're literally traveling across the entire province just to get there.
So
Yeah.
exactly. So Europe feels like Southern Ontario instead of Canada. You know what I mean? It's like you can bounce around to different worlds in a few hours or whatever.
Yeah.
Hit the autobahn in Germany and get there even
Very nice.
quicker or whatever. But
For sure. Now, what was it like playing with Dive? Because like that's a band that I like. I started getting into indie and shoegaze and bands like Tim Impala, and just around the same time as I was getting into bands like Billy Talent or Alexis or Muse, which I know Alexis and Billy Talent are huge influences for you, especially Alexis. And Dive was a band that I started listening to, and I was like, I like it, but it's just not pushing me over that edge until I hit about 17 or 18, where I could finally like listen to the music and understand where it's coming from. But they've, in my opinion, I would say that they are one of the modern giants, at least for the last generation, this current generation for that genre. What was it like touring with them and playing in front of their audience, essentially?
I love them. Like I felt really lucky to be on. And truth be told, it was our third tour with them. Like
Oh, really?
we had done tours in America with them. We did one with Death Heaven and Dive, like their co-headline. We opened for that, and then we did one in the States, Dive and us, and then got to go to Europe. So it's insane. Like I agree, they're giants in the genre, whatever that is. And I think they also sort of blend a lot of stuff. And this last record was sort of a harder, darker record. It's my favorite.
Right.
Last record, Deceiver. So I felt so lucky to be there. We like our hearts sunk bad because we were like on our way to Switzerland and then like Portugal and Spain, and like we had just done sort of the colder areas, like and we were about to head south and places we haven't been with Dive, and they were sold out shows and shit, and then it was like nah.
And then it all hit. I know it's been so brutal, and like obviously everyone's experienced it in their own way, but I can only imagine like, okay, we were about to play like you said, like new areas, and especially in the sun. I don't know about you, but I am not a fan of winter at all. Like I belong in 32 30 degrees Celsius weather at all times. I'm very much like a sun kind of guy, so I can imagine, being stuck in the north, obviously playing fantastic shows as well too, but everything outside of the venue, is just that much better. Now, you had toured previously, like you said, with Dive prior to playing Europe, and you had played in the US, and the US is a great mystery to me, especially only really being exposed to like the Canadian music scene. I'm really not going to count, the high school bands, trip to the US to go play like Frere Jacques or whatever, right? But I haven't really been experienced or exposed to much from the American market, and I'd love to hear what it was like from you touring down there, especially as a Canadian act.
Yeah, it's good. It's different, right? Like, I mean, it's an insane place geographically, obviously. I mean, have you traveled in the States though? Like,
I went to Coachella in 2019. Otherwise, it would be like
cool.
Boston and Chicago for
Right.
grade 11, grade 12 music. But like, you're a kid on a
That's
bus,
cool.
any vehicle, and I fall asleep. So I didn't really pay attention until
I feel you. I feel you.
stage.
I mean, I think I'm like wide-eyed at the geography down there and the sort of sociology, and it's just like a fascinating sort of mess of a beautiful country or landscape. At
Yeah,
least it's like just
absolutely.
this like mind bending it. And I mean, we essentially live on the border, you and I both.
Right.
But it's like a different energy as soon as you pass that border. I
Oh, it
feel
changes. It completely changes.
like the with all due respect, it's just like the air thickens or something, and like it just seems in a different speed or something, and it's a touch darker,
Yeah.
and it's like shit. Don't break your arm or you're fucked. Like there's
Yeah.
no safety net or whatever either. So it's like,
It's so true.
yeah. So I mean, it's good. It's fun, and listen, it's the world's biggest music market, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and there's 10 times the population to our country,
Yeah,
and talk about sort of dense populations in the
absolutely.
Northeast, and California has the population of our entire country.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like you've got a tour there, but
Mhm.
it's a grind, I think, for it's like up here we're supported in different ways, and
Mhm.
um and the radio might play us up here, but in the States it's like you're competing with a
Everywhere.
fuck ton of bands. So
Yeah.
it's tough, but but I'm up for it. We're planning a huge run coming up, and yeah, I'm looking forward to being back there. So
I'm excited to see, and I'm also, excited to hear more and more artists talking about how they're planning again, and things are staying, set in stone, right? But you said that they have a different energy there, and that's something I totally agree with. Now, do you feel that energy is faster than what it would be here?
in some ways, yeah.
Mhm.
Funny enough, like the 401, our highway here, is the fucking worst though.
Yeah.
If you're talking about speed, it's like the worst as far as etiquette too. Like
Yeah.
there's something smoother about driving even just 2-lane highways
Mm,
in the States. There's something
right.
better that I prefer in the States. You cross the border the other way back home, and you're like, this fucking sucks. We have all these lanes here. We can't figure this out, and I'm getting honked at. And
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I'm like,
Yeah,
the fuck
100%.
is
No, I deal with it all the
um
time. Like even like I'm up in Tottenham, and I swear to God, like everybody acts as if like they are in the 1920s, like Bentley driving around like super slow. And I'm sitting there thinking like, I gotta go home. Like I just want to sit. I don't want to get out of this car. Like
for real.
it's funny. I say in 1920s Bentley because I've been watching Peaky Blinders for the last
Okay.
couple weeks, and it has completely morphed my vocabulary and
Yeah.
my metaphors when I talk about stuff. But yeah, it is different. Like when me and my best friend Daniel, we were in California for Coachella, and on the Friday morning before the first 3 days, we went to the local Walmart. We were in Riccio, and we had an Uber driver essentially, take us around, right, and just kind of show us like, okay, you know, instead of it, because taxis will take the long route and then they'll charge you more for the same destination, right? So we were taking Ubers, and we had this guy named Martin that was helping us out and showing us the ropes and everything. And he's like, yeah, it's like a, you know, 40-minute drive from here. You know, it's not too bad. And I was like, yeah, 40 minutes is easy. I mean, again, coming from Tottenham, to get anywhere is an extra half hour. And as we were driving around, it was like, it just felt like there was so much more happening. The Walmart just felt massive. I felt like I was walking into an arena, and you know, there's like surfboards at a Walmart, and there's like a full, like, you know how some McDonald's here are like, you know, snugly placed into the entrance of a Walmart. They had like everything. And I'm sitting looking like, you can just live at Walmart in the US. You don't really have to go anywhere else. And you know, the 2 or 3 exposures that I had to the US, it feels like everything, it just feels like the wheels just turn faster and in their own direction, their own lane down there. So I'm always curious with people that have gone down there. Now, when you are touring, do you have a pre-show ritual, whether with yourself or with the band?
No, honestly,
just fucking rip it, eh?
Yeah, and maybe we should or whatever, but we don't. I think my pre-show ritual is like freaking out, like wondering if there's water bottles on the stage, or if there's, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, of course.
Are we ready? Okay, let's just go fucking do it. But,
well, when I saw you play with Dilly Dally in Mississauga back in 2019, you know, like, you guys fucking killed it, and then Dilly Dally killed it as well. And every time I watch a band and I see and I get the feeling that all the members are synchronized together, it always makes me think, like, did they do some sort of like huddle before, or like a pinky finger lock or something, just to, like, you know, synchronize their brains, like that scene in Avatar where they all move, like, join together.
nice, yeah.
And so it's always funny to hear, like there's some, like, one of my favorite bands growing up was Of Mice and Men, and they came up with like a new chant, like, for every tour, and then they would huddle around each other, and then they would say the chant, but then replace one city with another city. And so I'm always curious to hear the band's, you know, ritual. But it's funny that you don't have one, because of the one time that I've seen you perform live, like, I was like, yeah, this band's locked in, you know.
I appreciate you saying, yeah. I think I suffer from overthinking things or whatever. So I think it's like, the less I think before we go on, and the more we just it's like, just fucking, let's give her.
Yeah, that's the best way to be, though. And I get what you mean by overthinking too. Like, I'm the type of guy that's like planning everything. Like, you know, on my way here, I probably ran through my gear check, like my mic, my stand, the interface, and all that, at least like 5 times, and I knew I had it. But I'm like, I don't want to be driving and be like, oh shit, and have to turn around and go back for it, you know. So the I guess the overthinking sometimes is a blessing and a curse, depending on the scenario. Now, when you're touring, is there one item that you believe that every touring musician should have on them, whether it be, you know, a phone charger or anything of that sort?
I was gonna say a phone is like, so I'm the type of person, when we're on tour, it's like, you know, when someone posts a story and on their Instagram or whatever, and then someone lurks it like right away. It's like, all my stories are lurked, like, you know, like, because I'm just like crushing people's, I'm just like passing the time, just like, you know, doing whatever to get through another drive or whatever. I'm trying to think though. I mean, definitely a phone charger. I've recently been chugging like Manuka honey. It's like a thicker honey, I think, from New Zealand.
Right.
It's kind of expensive. I think it's like $30 or something. You know about Manuka honey?
I've never tried it. I think I've seen it at like farmers markets, but like, look at me talking about fucking farmers markets here.
Yeah, it's like just a thicker honey, I think, or it's but it coats your throat and does its thing. So if there's any hint of voice getting lost over the course of a tour, it's like just a secret weapon for vocalist,
Do you have your own like warm-ups when you are about to sing? Like, do you go through like the same runs or anything?
I don't typically until my voice is starting to get hoarse, which happens. I'm trying to find this app. You can tell we haven't been on tour in a bit.
Of course.
There's an app called Vocal Ease.
Oh.
And it just has warm-ups on it. I wish I was quicker here. Maybe I deleted it. I thought I don't need this shit anymore. But anyway, it's good. It just has funny sounding, like it's like nung 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 nung. You're supposed to like
go through the scale and everything.
Like access different muscles and whatever.
For sure. Now, one of the questions I've always had for you, and I actually wanted to ask you this when we met the first time. Any interviewer always asks like, "What's your influences?" Like the sort of same questions and all that. And a lot of the times the question is based on the from the perspective of like, what's a direct influence from you? And I've heard on other podcasts as well where you've talked about like Alexis and all that. But I'm curious to know if there are any indirect influences, like when you were talking about Vicious Circles on Born to Roam. Dallas Green was like, do you mind if I Mary J. Blige this tune? That to me is like, if you looked at Dallas Green, you wouldn't immediately think that Mary J. Blige is like an immediate, influence. But when you're a singer, all singers are influences. And so do you have any indirect influences to your songwriting?
It's a really good question. I imagine that growing up in the church and that being my first exposure to music, specifically like hymns and big band like brass, and just even a cappella type of stuff. I think I'm drawn to like beautiful sounding dark music, like the stuff that we're singing in the church a lot of the time is about somebody dying 2,000 years ago, right? And like celebrating death and or a resurrection or whatever. But it's like a lot of these songs, or some fear of hell and some hope in heaven, and it's like so beautiful and hopeful or something with these like dark lyrics, right? And I imagine that's had an effect on me and just the music that I would hear. When or at least an hour or whatever every week,
Of course, yeah. When I listen to your music, though, especially listening to Suffer Summer when it came out within those first couple of days, there was a lot of different influences that I heard just for a specific moment, not like a direct like, this is a riff from Alexis or Blink or Third Eye Blind, that's now sounds identical. But there was a lot of moments where the same emotion that I would feel, listening to Take Off Your Pants and Jacket, or listening to Crisis, or I can't remember the Third Eye Blind album name, the red one where she covers her face.
Self-titled, yeah.
Self-titled. Okay, there you go. Right. So there's a lot of moments where I heard those influences in terms of how I received the music through emotion, not necessarily guitar tone and what key you're playing in and what type of chord you're playing and all that. But I wanted to ask about the Third Eye Blind cover that you did and how much of a fan you are of that band, because I'm a very huge fan of that record. And I'm curious to see what kind of influences from Third Eye Blind specifically have come to your music.
Oh yeah. I mean, big time, like Dying to Live, our song off Suffer Summer, is quite like a Third Eye Blind worship song. I think it's just an example of like a lyricist that just has this grip on life and singing it sort of how the collective conscious like feels it somehow. It's just like one of these songwriters, at least on that record. I think it's just like pretty unbelievable how much he nails it. And yeah, I think he's just like a monster songwriter, Stephen Jenkins. So he's a controversial dude outside of Third Eye Blind on his takes on other things and his whatever relationship with the press, but I think he's a giant and yeah, someone I look up to, and he's friends with Billy Corgan. You know, they've worked together on music, and I think the worlds do relate closer than people would think. You know,
sure.
I think people put the Pumpkins in like this, like at least the first few records in this, and then Third Eye Blind's considered some commercial, blah 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 effort, and it's just like both are amazing, and both there's a Venn diagram where the two meet, I think.
The two meet, absolutely. Yeah, you worded it well for sure. Now, when you were writing Suffer Summer, one of the things that I always kind of think about is when someone's writing a song, are they trying to achieve a very specific emotion, whether it be based off like a real life event or just the emotion in general? So imagine you're sitting there with a guitar and you're like, I want to write a song that feels this certain way. And you try and, find your way through the no man's land to, achieve writing the song. Do you songwrite like that, or in the sense of letting the song take you where it needs to go and then, just taking the end result, as is?
I feel you. I'll show you 1 second.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll tell you, I kind of have like cheat sheets. Like, there's these things called LAFM's Quarterly, and they're like just kind of released quarterly, and they're like thick magazines, and they have themes to them. This one was happiness, and that's like what Suffer Summer is about. And this one, I read through this one prior to Deathless, and it just takes like writers from the last like hundreds of years, and just great thinkers and passages on these specific things. So it's kind of, there's a bunch of them there.
LAFM's Quarterly, I'll definitely check that out.
LAFM's Quarterly, yeah. So it's like I start with a theme, I grab one of these, and I just kind of start pulling from that shit. And then if I've got like a theme at the top of the sheet, at the top of my mind, then I can start kind of riffing lyrics geared toward that theme. And I just kind of work out from there lyrically, and then I'm pretty collaborative on like the composition side of shit. But it's pretty lyrical for me. It's like, I think I hope to consider that it's my strength or my craft that I really want to sharpen. And
I would say so. I would say that like your lyrics don't feel like they come from a place of trying to generalize. Like when you are singing something, or you're singing through your lyrics, I feel like I know exactly where you're coming from, and I can hear the intent, and also the choice of words. You can hear the intent. It's not like if you're singing a song about happiness and that's, Suffer Summer, you're not like, I'm happy. Like that's just like the most generic sentence, right? Like you're talking about happiness in your own way, and it's something that you can actually, put behind yourself, or put yourself behind it rather. So when you're singing and when you're coming up with lyrics, are you matching melodies at the same time while you're writing, or are you writing the lyrics and then trying to find the melody afterwards?
It depends, but usually the lyrics are sort of pre-baked,
Right.
And then comes the melody. But there's been times where I do the opposite, and I've got a melody, and I just feel often that feels more like jamming a square peg into a round hole. Right. And I have to start compromising on the lyrics and the intent on the lyrics there. But sometimes it's worth it. Like if I've got a melody in mind, I just need to find something and and let that melody live.
Yeah. Well, and that's the key right now. When you were writing Suffer Summer, were you for each song singing about a specific moment that's happened within your life, or is it sort of loosely based around like, a sort of feeling or something? Because when you and I were talking personally on Instagram, it felt that pummeling was sort of like what was sort of like what life was doing to you, that you were sort of
Mm.
getting pummeled by what's happening around you in the world, tours canceled, et cetera, et cetera. And then somersault sort of feels like you're kind of just rolling with that you're sort of blending yourself into that energy, like turning yourself into sort of like water, like a liquid state, and then moving with the tides as opposed to getting, pummeled by it.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate your perspective and that message
Of
about it. And
course.
I think I think you got it pretty right. Like, I want these things to mean different things to different people, I think. And I'm not totally, I think once they're out there, they're no longer mine or
Right.
whatever, as cliche as that is. Like,
Mhm.
um, but yeah, I think they're not necessarily about specific moments. Like, pummeling isn't necessarily about the last 2 years and some of the trials of the last 2 years. I think it's a bigger picture kind of thing. And it's actually how I felt in my life at times.
Mhm.
Maybe not in the day that I wrote it, but I think
Right.
I can pull from days where I was feeling like this. And so
Mhm.
not everything, I think everything in Chastity comes from some depth of a feeling that I've experienced personally, but not everything is sort of verbatim, you
Right.
know.
Absolutely. Now, when you are working with the band, are you giving direction in terms of what sort of feeling you're going for? Or are you sitting there with the lyrics, like you said, pre-baked, and then sending that to the band or working with them in the same room and then trying to hone in on a collective like feeling with each song?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think it happens scenario to scenario a little bit, and had I'm lucky to have had like a bunch of different scenarios and different situations,
Right.
um, with different people I write with and different people I jam with, and then who play on the record. Um, I think I've got a certain level of trust and even like admiration for whoever I'm working with,
Absolutely.
um, um, because I've sort of asked them to come with me and help me out on projects. It's like it's because I probably love something that they've done
Of
in the
course.
past, you know. So I think it's like my input on drums isn't a ton actually. You know what I
Right.
mean? I don't really have an ear for that
Mhm.
feeling as much as my drummer friends probably do, you
Of
know.
course.
So it's like I sort of have to delegate that type of shit
Mhm.
and just surrender to instincts that these people I've brought on
That they have.
are doing. You know what I mean? So exactly. So um, there's definitely surrender points in the music, and I just need. I think my protective thing is just like honoring the lyrics, honoring the feeling in the
Yeah,
melody,
for sure.
and finding parts that like lift that melody
Mm.
into the
Well, it's
highest place it can.
exactly like it's all about the foundation, right? Like, on a very general level, like the drums need to provide a foundation that allows the singer to feel like the song is either moving forward or staying in one place. And then you add your bass on top and all that stuff. But all of it is sort of like foundational support for the melody, which is the one thing that any sort of music listener, musician or not, can connect to because it's actual language and storytelling and emotion, right? Like you don't necessarily need to listen to a drum beat and be like, that drum beat feels exactly like hanging out in the sun, right? Like
Right.
there's all these things that have to be added layered on top of that, but of course they all have to work harmoniously. And now in my experience, like I'm not a singer. I mean, sure, I'm taking singing lessons to play drums and sing at the same time, but in no way am I a frontman. Um, I've grown up playing drums first, and then going to Humber, eventually playing like piano and guitar and bass and all that, and
Okay.
teaching it here too. But I've always been curious on the sort of come up story specifically for singers, for frontmen and front women, and how they've been able to sort of embrace that because it feels like a completely different ball game. Like, yes, the voice is an instrument. yes, it has notes and you have to be in time and in key and all that, but it's like your diaphragm and your brain and your mouth is the instrument, as opposed to your hands or your fingertips or your feet then playing something else, and that itself is the instrument. Like when I'm playing drums, my kick pedal isn't the instrument, it's the actual bass drum, right? It's the sub and low end that provides, it's the ground that provides, right? My hi-hats is, you know, the stick itself necessarily isn't the instrument, it's the hi-hat to make the song feel like it's moving somewhere, right? And so it's always been different for me as a drummer to wrap my head around the idea of like actually seeing yourself as an instrument and then also as the entertainer at the same time, because there's two of that there. So what is your story? I know you grew up in church and whatnot, but being a frontman, like what is your story coming up as a frontman?
I get what you mean. Yeah. Yeah, I've been singing for a bit. I think I accepted like I've got a different type of tone and I'm not like the ultimate best singer or whatever. So I think it sort of re-emphasizes that it's like I better have something worth saying than if I'm not going to be this, you know, number one singer star, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, so yeah, I mean, I took singing lessons for a bit. It clicked a bit. I think there's definitely something to technique and, you know what I mean, breathing and
all the,
you know,
but I mean like in terms of perspective and how you mentally approach it, right? Because there's a lot of times where you can train somebody to be very technically proficient in something. That doesn't mean that they'll be able to connect with somebody just because, you know, you can shred. Like I respect Steve Vai as a musician. I don't seek his music. I've never sought out his music because it feels like math. And I don't like math, and two, it's like I don't want music to feel like math. I want it to strike a chord, to touch a fiber of my being that hasn't been reached before, you know, and that's what you're saying, like finding your own style is something that's very important. And I think that's something that I wouldn't necessarily say it's rare, which is the word that comes to mind, but having your own style is like a gift and a blessing in its own, because it allows you to pave your own way. And so what was the sort of approach to sort of like, you know, recognizing and then pursuing your own lane, your own style, your own being, essentially?
I think it was a bit of a windy road, to be honest. And at first it was like pretty raw acoustic type of music when I was a teenager. And then I think I wanted to sort of subvert that part of myself and go the far opposite way. And I got this like Ontaris AVP1 like auto tune like box, like hardware. And started fucking with that, and it was so fun, and started, you know, singing kind of emotional lyrics in a way that I was hearing like Kanye, you know, do it or something.
Absolutely.
And so I kind of like took that path pretty hard and messed with that stuff, and then I just like found my way back, I think, to that original sort of raw thing and Chastity and in a way that feels most like me most of the time, but I also just have this itch still a little bit to like, what about that other stuff? What about that other side? Because it's fun and it's cool and it's like, and it subverts the whole crowd on this side, I think, of like, we want like this rawness and this realness and whatever and heaviness, and, you know, and then, so my path, I think, was windy and weird, and I always have to be like subverting something for some reason and undermining something. I don't know why.
Interesting.
I'm a middle child.
There you go.
Or whatever, you know.
J. Cole's middle child right there.
Yeah. Yeah. So So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question,
Well,
but
it
that's
does, and
yeah,
it gives me more curiosity because, like, you know, again, as a drummer, I can play the same groove, you know, really even using like the same drums. Like I don't even have to change the size of the drums or whatever, but I can use the same groove, like a basic backbeat, and suddenly it's a groove for Pantera or
right,
Metallica. And then I can use the same groove again, and now it's, you know, a track off of the Beatles' White Album or Sgt. Pepper's, and then the exact same groove. And now it's, you know, the opening track to Justice self-titled album. Like it's the same thing. So my sort of musical sentence coexists pretty much anywhere. It's all about like application and context, right? And so
yeah,
I can imagine the conundrum that a vocalist would have where it's like, okay, well, you know, you start singing songs in a specific genre, and it may put you in that box where you may not want to exist in that box all the time. You want to, I say box loosely, but you would want to jump between different places, right? And
for
and
sure.
this is the one thing that I've always thought about. It's like, how does an artist stay true to themselves? And you know, people change, right? I think that's one of the things that audiences and fan base like maybe not like to accept, as opposed to saying that they don't want to accept. But
Mm,
you know, you look at like everyone's like, they've been different since their first album. I like
yeah,
whatever band's first album. It's like, yeah, man, that was fucking 8 years ago. Like that
mhm,
person's changed, and you're gonna tell this artist who you hold up on a pedestal for being true to themselves 8 years ago that then you're gonna give them shit for doing that now 8 years later. And this is the one thing that I always find that like drummers, I mean, excluding Phil Collins or Anderson Paak or whatever, but we don't really have to deal with that because it's like it's the drummer. John Bonham
right.
always sounds like John Bonham. Travis Barker, especially now, always sounds like Travis Barker. But how does a songwriter, how does a, you know, performer stay true to themselves while also, you know, playing music for people and making music for people? And that I feel like there's this constant like, you know, conflict with that, this constant push, like the scene of Captain America and Iron Man where he's like, you know, holding the shield in the beam, right? It's like it's this constant like conflict that, I mean, I've never experienced it before, obviously, because I just do that all day. But like how does a singer, how does a songwriter like navigate that across time? Because I listen to Deathless and I listen to Suffer Summer, and it feels like you've progressed naturally. It feels like you've actually expanded more. Songs like Vicious Circles are is a tune, in my opinion, where you are expanding to a different sort of feel, but it feels like Chastity, like, you know, just changed, but like it's still Chastity, it's still Brandon. It doesn't feel
Yeah,
like suddenly you're playing distortion and then you're like, I'm putting away the electric guitar and I'm taking out the acoustics and the shaker. You know what I mean? Like it
right.
feels like it's moved in a way that's progressed so well, and I feel like there's artists that maybe don't achieve that across the board as others. And so I'm curious to hear what you think about that.
For sure. I mean, it gets brought up for sure. Like, I understand Deathless is different
Mhm.
from Suffer Summer vocally, and um, I think half of Deathless I'm sort of yelling and whatever, and then on the next record I'm not at all on
Oh.
Homemade Satan,
Mhm.
and now Suffer Summer. I just read something where somebody's kind of held it against the record that
Mhm.
the vocals are up in the mix and that it's a more polished production and whatever. And I understand it if somebody loves Deathless and wants more of Deathless, but luckily, I mean, if you want more of Deathless, like you should listen to Deftones or whatever. Like, you
Yeah,
know
it's
what I
like
mean? Or there's more. You can
this is
you can
something else
have
out
more
there.
of that actually, and it's
Absolutely.
better.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, it's a funny thing. I don't know. I think I'm guilty of it too. That
Mm.
um, it's like people are like, well, I only listened to the first two, like the used albums or
Right.
whatever, or
Mhm.
I stopped at Black Parade or whatever. You
Yeah,
know, it's
yeah.
like, so I get that it happens, um, and it's an honor. Like I hoped that Deathlust would do all right, and I
Right.
tried quite hard on it,
Mhm.
but I didn't know that people would still be talking about it
Mm.
in these 2022 or whatever, or holding it against me to my new music.
Mhm.
It's a bit of an honor too. So I'll
Yeah.
take it. It's all good, you know.
Sure. Well, I don't mean my perspective to come across like it. I don't think there's in my
No,
opinion,
totally.
I feel like you've actually progressed in your own respect because you're a truthful artist, you know,
Mm.
like for example, growing up, I was a big fan of aside from music that I explored on my own, but like the music that my parents showed me was either like Latin music because my mother's from the Dominican, and so there's a
Cool.
lot of like salsa, bachata, merengue, or like freestyle music or Jamiroquai or whatever, right? And then for my dad, bands like U2, Led Zeppelin, The Police, Third Eye Blind was a band he showed me, Counting Crows, like live, like there's a lot in there, and so at that age, I was never really to explore the discography and sort of place myself in sort of each era for the musician. And then when I started getting into Billy Talent, and when I got into them, what came out? It was Dead Silence. That was like I'm listening to Billy Talent, and Dead Silence is coming out at the same time, like 2012 or 13. And that was a record that I was like, yes, like this is what I wanted, you know, like this is perfect. And people would shit on Billy Talent 3. They'd be like, White Sparrows is a bad song. And I'm like, you're cracked, man. That's a fantastic tune. Like, that's them continuously, that's them being themselves. That's the whole point of it. Like, it's not just meant for you, it's also meant for the artists themselves, right? And then I listened to bands like Blink. Like when I started listening to Blink, Dogs Eating Dogs came out like a year later. And I felt like euphoria. Like that to me felt like the record that was like, okay, Neighborhoods was them getting back together, and it was three people playing at the same time. Three people playing at the same time, but like different parts. It didn't feel like they were cohesive. You know, like Tom's always using the edge style guitar on like every song. And they're good songs, but it didn't feel like it was blended well. Like it felt undercooked. And then Dogs Eating Dogs, I was like, finally. Like here are songs that it feels like this is dad, you know, Mark, Tom, and Travis, not sounding like dad rock. Like this is them actually pushing themselves and doing something. And then like California comes out, and I'm just like this long exhale, just like, damn. Like it feels like you made a record to try to please me, which is not actually what I mean. I'm speaking personally, not actually what I want. Like I want artists to explore, because like you said, like if you want that sound, that record is already there, and then everything else that's within that category, you know, like if I want Enema, I can go to Enema, and then Sum 41, and you know, Ocean Avenue, whatever the Yellow Card, right? Like it's endless, right? It doesn't just have to be from Blink. But what I love to see is when artists take a few years off while they're touring, and you can hear all the things that changed in their life, like from you, like from Homemade Satan to Suffer Summer. I feel like I can hear Brandon Williams from then to now and everything in between, like that change. And then whatever next record comes out, it's from 2022 to 2027 or whatever the timeline is. Like I like it when artists can sort of go out, like continue to explore, continue to push the boundaries for yourselves, because that's what's the most like exciting and engaging music. Like I know everybody fucking shits on U2 all the time, and aside from like, you know, the whole Apple Music thing, you can't delete the album and all that, I really do like their music and respect them as musicians, you know, on the record. And I've always been fascinated with how they've been able to sort of like successfully reimagine their entire quartet like every time. And I always felt like they were a band that people could take a little bit more pointers from, in terms of like, how can you stay true as an artist and create music that feels good for you, and is also in a way that you are experimenting, but you're not experimenting like Trout Mask Replica or whatever, where it just feels like this random stuff. I don't know if you're a fan of Captain Beefheart, but I can't stand it. I'm not a fan at all of it. Have you ever heard it?
I don't know it. No.
Don't.
Okay.
It's like seven people playing different songs at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah, it's out there. And so when I'm teaching my students and I'm trying to get them to understand like how to play in time, I just show them Chout Mass Replica, because it just sounds like hot garbage. Now people like it, and everyone's free to like it. I just think it's you know, but that's one of the things that I love seeing in artists, where they can like recognize, okay, it's been 4 or 5 years since my last release, and I am a different person. The world is a different place. Like Spotify is bigger than XYZ labels. You know what I mean? Like people, you know, TikTok is like the world has changed so much, and I like it when artists continue to move forward. The one thing that actually annoys me is like I have 5 albums that sound identical. Like it's the same thing every time. And I'm like, why make a second record if you already have the first one? You know, that's when it feels like product on a shelf. Like Buzz Lightyear is just like sitting there. And that's the thing that I love, especially about Stuff for Summer. Like I actually feel like you've like grown and you've put that on record and actually achieved that progression as an individual, you know?
I really appreciate it.
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think what you were saying with Blink-182 and whatever, like, I don't know if this was the case for them, but I think there are pressures sort of behind the scenes and in the emails and whatever, and
In the emails, yeah.
like, if you write sort of this way, you know, and if something sounds this way, then we can achieve this height with the project, you know.
Right.
And I think there's like weird bad pressures to the industry, and it comes with Spotify and with TikTok and whatever. It's like, if you do this, this could mean this for the algorithm. And I think songwriters, it just sort of compromises the craft and something they've been working in their own way, in their own craft to sharpen. And then unfortunately, it's just like these whispers in the ears from the industry, you know. So I don't know if that happened on any of Blink's albums and they figured they could achieve these heights if they went this way, but I think it's just important to me to not hear that type of shit and whatever.
Absolutely.
It's like I had a vision for the project initially when I didn't know shit about Spotify and TikTok. I don't think was around, you know. So it's just like I have to pay attention to that voice, and stay on track with that. And then if Spotify or TikTok or radio or these things happen, then great. But you know, I'd love if that bend a bit to Chastity instead of
100%.
me bending. I also think the public is smarter than some songwriters think, you know. And I think 100%. So I don't want to pretend like my audience is like stupid or something, because they're not, I don't think, you know. So I'm not just gonna like pull some big attempt at some other thing,
some like grand album to, you know, to get it towards like, oh, this is what the people will like. It's like, it's your brain versus, you know, 400 million or whatever the number is.
It's not
right. Absolutely. Now, when you had a vision for Suffer Summer, did you already have Vicious Circles in mind, and were you already thinking about having Dallas Green on there?
No, like I mean, I would have loved to have had that vision. I first thought of Suffer Summer in 2016 when I can't imagine why Dallas Green would know.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, for sure.
So no, I couldn't have imagined it, and it's a crazy thing.
It's so cool. I love, like, I met him. It would have been, I met him 2 times. I met him once at, do you know Rarity from Hamilton?
Sounds familiar.
They I can't even remember their names now. One, Adam, Evan, Loden, I think Corbin left the band, and another guy named Cole. They're with my God, New Damage. And so they had an EP or album rather. They have an album called The Longest Lonesome, and me and my best friend went to the release show at the Dynalone's office in Toronto, and Dallas was just hanging out there, and I was like, man, this guy's so cool. Like, it's so cool to talk. And I had just previously seen him probably like 2-3 weeks before that show at Oshiega with him performing as City and Color, and he was like such a genuine dude. And then when you announced the song, I was like, that's so nice. Like, I can only imagine how, I mean, for you, like, obviously you're a big fan of Alexis on Fire, right? So it's like meeting one of your idols as a kid, like as you were saying with Luke Bentham too, right? Like, it must have been a huge moment. But just to be able to like write a song with him, and just like connect as people instead of like fan and idol, and just be able to be like, hey man, like hop on my song and just sing together. That to me like just blows my mind, like that day, that scenario.
Yeah, for sure. Funny enough, I wonder if I went by the Dine Alone office to pick some stuff up or to drop some stuff off for my second record.
Right.
And Dallas was there. There was a show in the back. It might have been Rarity. I think I might have been
At that
there,
show?
but I went upstairs into the office. I was like in the warehouse beside it, and then I went into the office and was talking to Dallas for probably an hour. I was nervous about my second record coming out. I was like so nervous, and I was just like asking him, how did you do with poor reviews, especially knowing that he doesn't deserve any
Yeah.
poor reviews.
Yeah, no, he does not.
So, but I know, and he just talked about his experience with certain publications. He just gave me this wealth of his experience and his past and their history with Alexis and whatever, and some people not ever getting it,
Yeah,
and understanding how sick that project was. So
yeah.
that's funny. I think I was there at least for a show that was in the back of Dine Alone.
Yeah, because I'd only been inside once. Like it's like the corner door. Like when you walk in, they have like the couches there and like the front table where like they sell all the vinyls. And then it was like that, like the corridor, like down the bar, like all the way down,
Yeah.
like over there. And it was a sick show. I mean, like it looked like we were inside a music video. And I know that the Dirty Nil shot a music video there too. I can't remember for which song, but they shot it in that same like square room. And
Cool.
yeah, they finished up their set, or maybe it was that the second band was performing and then Rarity was about to play, and he was just sitting there like having a beer. It just like he was a regular Joe. I was like, this is mad. I was like, I can't believe I'm here. And then I tap my buddy. I'm like, do you know who that is? He's like, why does the guy look so familiar? I'm like, that's Dallas King from Alexis on Fire. And he like just fully like smacked my chest. He's like, get the fuck out of here. I was like, yeah, man. He's like, do you want to go to him? I'm like, sure. And so we just went up, just like, hey Dallas, big fan. Saw you at Oshieka. Do you mind if we get a picture? And he's like the nicest dude. I was like, wow, like this is great. He's such a good guy.
I know. It's insane how regular he is and acts or whatever, and sees himself or something, and speaks to people so regular and nice. It's like I recognize the sort of extraordinary quality about him, and but he's just humble, I think, and so cool. And yeah, it's been an honor anytime I've gotten to speak with him, and I try not to sort of abuse the access of talking to him too much, because I'm like, but
I would imagine like if I was in the same room with him, able to chat with him, I'd be picking that dude's ear all day. Like the most questions. Remember that one time you were playing at Much Music, or do you remember that one time you were at Strombo's house, and like it was just you're just like, kid, enough, like it'd be too much.
I know. I have to put a governor on myself to not, you know what I mean? Like I have to just put the limit, or else, and
you just go on.
But it's been an honor. And Vicious Circle is the biggest of them, I think. So.
Yeah, and I'm very glad that you got to do that. Like to me, seeing that as a fan and as a viewer, it's like this is a great moment. This is like when two TV shows collide and they're on the same episode. As I love seeing it. So what is next for Chastity? I know you have the shows coming up with the Dirty Nut, but what do you have for the rest of the year?
Yeah, we're doing those. We're doing some festival stuff in the UK. We're gonna do some state stuff that's not announced yet, but that'll come later in the summer. We're doing a bunch of Canada end of next month. And then we're doing like across Canada in May. Just trying to sort of put shows in the summer. It seems to be the safest thing. And I've just put out a record called Suffer Summer. So I would also seems a bit catchy to do a
Yeah.
summer
Perfect
tour
time.
and just jam up the summer, you know. And I'm like you, like it's going to be a happier time with that type of weather too. So it's like, let's just go make it ultimate. And I want to play 100 shows this year or whatever. Like I want to play a lot, you know, if I
Well, you got
can. And
2 years to
so
make up for.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So 100 is a bit of a high goal maybe in COVID times, but I'm trying to do it. Before that, I would want to play 2 or 300, you know
Oh
what
yeah,
I mean? But just if we can fill the summer, I'll be happy, and we're just working toward that. And
absolutely.
a lot of shows, maybe some more videos, and just working away trying to
Mhm.
support these songs we just put out. So
Absolutely. And so for all the Flat Five listeners, make sure you go listen to Suffer Summer by Chastity, the new album. And we have songs like Vicious, or he has songs like Vicious Circles that are out, and a whole bunch of other fantastic tunes. It is 100% an album that I recommend listening to from top to bottom, from front to back. I think this record is sequenced beautifully. It feels like it actually progresses really well. And then with that, everybody listening should go listen to Deathless and Homemade Satan as well. I'm not sure if the shows with Dirty Nil are sold out, but if they're not, grab some tickets. Be sure to look out on his shows coming out in the future. And Brandon, I gotta say, man, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It has absolutely been phenomenal to have you on the show.
thank you so much again. Nice to see you.
Likewise, man.
Appreciate it.
Alrighty, everybody on the Flat Five, take care. We'll see you on the next episode.